This is the Wait For It podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wait For It podcast. I'm your co-host Phil Barrera, aka Phil the Filipino.
And I'm your other co-host, Mr. Eric Almighty. And for this edition of International Feature, we decided to tackle a very controversial film that we have both watched and we both have thoughts about. In fact, the whole world has thoughts about it, and it is currently going through the news cycle, so it's very relevant here in Oscar month. Coming around the corner, Phil, Emilia Pérez is the movie we are going to cover, and for the first time in a long time, maybe ever, it's a movie we're going to feature for maybe all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, February was supposed to be a very specifically themed month, as it usually is, because last week's episode was Pretty Woman, which definitely go check out that episode to hear our thoughts. A little bit of a spoiler. We very much enjoyed it. And then we were going to do another very iconic rom-com. And then Oscar nominations happened. And even though this did very well at, the Golden Globes, and then we started to learn more and more about it, obviously clips started going viral for all the wrong reasons. And then, like I said, those nominations happened, and I said to Eric, we're going to have to watch this thing, and we may have to pivot in February just because of what's going on here. So, preface this here in the very beginning, there are a lot of issues going on outside of the movie that we are not fully qualified to discuss. We will bring them up because they are important, but there is so much happening with this, and I said to you, Eric, I feel like we should contribute to as much negative press as possible heading into Oscar season, unless I enjoyed it.
And we have not discussed this film at all. Phil has watched this, maybe finished watching it minutes before we started recording. So he heard my reaction and immediately said we had to do this. And Phil, if you like this movie, more power to you. We're going to talk freely about this movie, and we're just going to get this out of the way. If you have not watched this movie, we are not here to convince you to watch it. If anything, this is a word of warning, which should really tell you what type of episode we're about to get into. But if you really want to hear what all the fuss is about, we'll try to break it down for both audiences that have not seen the movie but that will include specific details about the film's plot and progression. So if you don't want to hear any of that, and then you want to join in on the ride we're about to journey on, go check that out. Come back here. But yeah, we're going to talk very freely about this movie. Although it just came out in 2024, it is too much for us to simply tiptoe around. We're already going to be doing a lot of tiptoeing, as Phil kind of alluded to, for a lot of issues that we are not really qualified to speak on. But Phil, I am ready to jump into it. All the highs, all the lows, and everything in between.
So, let's get to the Letterbox'd Synopsis. Emilia Pérez. It released in November of last year to all audiences. It was, Eric, a Cannes festival. Might as well be a festival. I think that's probably what they're all doing over there at the Cannes Film Festival, just fisting each other. A festival darling, right? How many of those have we come across during this podcast and just as fans of film in general? But Emilia Pérez, as it was making those rounds, started making a lot of noise within the film community. It was directed by the lovely Jacques Ayoudad. I think that's how you pronounce his name. The synopsis: Rita, an underrated lawyer working for a large law firm, more interested in getting criminals out of jail than bringing them to justice, is hired by the leader of a criminal organization. Once again, a lot of things happening on the outside of this movie. We will talk about that a little bit later. But here is where we will start, because we always try to start on a relatively positive side, point out things that maybe did work. The idea of a Mexican cartel member hiring a really good lawyer to help him and his family, even though separately, disappear because they want to go through a transition phase and kind of reinvent themselves, on paper, is not the worst premise that I've ever heard for a film. It's not like if in some other universe where this is this is directed by someone who's not an asshole, by a cast and crew, not a cast, we'll talk about the cast, but by a crew that, you know, maybe actually gives a shit about the source material and learning about what they should have learned about. It's not the worst thing ever in terms of like a premise for a film. And I think that's what you were alluding to whenever you first watched it, because you were like, I get what they were going for. However, you know, shit on a canvas is pretty much is kind of what happened. You know when they give paint to monkeys in a zoo and then they sell that painting for thousands of dollars? Emilia Pérez.
That's this movie. That's this movie. And watching it, 13 Oscar nominations, just absolutely crazy. And we're going to talk maybe towards the end of the episode about how that's all unfolding. This episode will come out well before the Oscars actually happens, but I pretty much know where that's going to go. And at this point, who knows what else will have unfolded or been revealed leading up to the event. I just don't understand what is going on right now with some of the nominations and the Academy. Now, I'm not going to act like I am well versed in the Oscars, the Academy, the voting selections, all of that, but in doing some research, it does seem like the Academy has been more international, which raises more concerns that internationally this film has been received very well by many critics. And when we look at things like Rotten Tomatoes, I mean, it is currently certified fresh, and we'll talk about those scores specifically. I feel like this is a movie that objectively is a bad movie because it doesn't execute any of the vision that it presents forward. And you're also dealing with several delicate subjects for so many different demographics. I am none of those demographics. This movie is not for me. But even I walked away highly offended at the material that was presented. And there are, you can have a difference of opinions on things like the Mexican cartel and trans rights. But there is a delicate way to touch on some of these topics with a little bit of human decency and also with a little bit of like ethicalness that I feel is missing from this movie completely. From its direction to the acting, though I will say I think people like Zoe Saldana probably thought they were a part of something special. Because in her performance, I mean, she is doing everything she can to stop this movie from drowning. And I think that's a testament to why she got the Oscar nomination and I believe won a Golden Globe. Phil, I really want us to dissect this movie a little bit and kind of take things slowly. Talk to me about the first 15 to 30 minutes of this movie, because I told you the first 15 minutes, I was like, oh, not bad. And then we take a turn. And you know what song the turn happens. So I'd love to know, what were your initial thoughts about half an hour going into this film when you now learn about the premise that you just said isn't awful on paper to some of the execution mistakes they made early on?
Yeah, before I do that, I want to touch on what you said about, in terms of this being received very well by like international audiences, film critics, and something that I watched, in preparation for this is, when we're talking about all these movies that are supposed to be like part of representation and, the Cannes Film Festival gives it these awards, trans people and, the Hispanic community are not watching this movie at the Cannes Film Festival. So then when fast forward, GLAAD, is then reviewing the movie and saying it is highly offensive, and that's just talking about the transgender community. We haven't even gotten into the Mexican community and how they deservedly are incredibly upset, and they should be. This is like you said, this is a wildly offensive movie, and we live through an age where Judd Apatow put out rom-coms every year, so we know what offensive films are. So yeah, that's a really good point that we're getting like in where the crew and all this. Again, I'm getting distracted, but yes. So in the beginning, like when you get the premise of the film, you're like, okay, I see what they're going for here. It is a little on the nose where she's like, oh, this is the really, really smart woman lawyer who has to walk her superior through a court case. She gets the bad guys out, even though she wants to get the good or help the good guys. And that's all stuff we've seen before. But again, you can rope me in with that premise. And yes, it's such a good point about Zoe Saldana. It's such a bummer. This is the thing that she's gonna get recognized for in terms of winning, because she's fantastic. Even, outside of obviously the Avatars and the Guardians of the Galaxies, she's just a fantastic performer. And unfortunately, this is going to be what is associated with her forever. And I don't know. I know have always been a Selena Gomez fan. You know how I feel. I am done with people saying and telling me that she's a talented actress. She's not. And take the Spanish out of it. Okay.
Yeah, for the record, I like her music.
Oh, that's fair.
I was never over here like Wizards of Waverly Place. Let's bring her back.
My whole thing is murders in the murder. Why am I murders in the building?
Yeah,
why
murder,
am I
one of those.
forgetting the name of the show?
Only murders.
Only murders.
In the building?
I knew murders was in it.
Yeah.
Because I really, really enjoyed that show, and every time she's on the screen, it just completely takes me out of it. She's also dating Betty Blanco, another deduction. So, anyway, but I'm not. I'm just kind of done with it, with people telling me that she's a good actress. She is not. But and then we'll talk about Gascon a little bit later. But yeah, and then we get into that number, the one that you have all seen, whether or not you've seen Emilia Pérez, you have seen this number, and it's right before it is another fairly interesting back and forth between her and I can't remember the name of his name is the cartel leader. It's escaping me right now. Again, I think as soon as the movie ended, it's been trying to escape my brain pretty much immediately. So that in and of itself, that conversation, also not bad. But then we jump into it, and it's just kind of balls to the wall nonsense for the next hour and 45 minutes. So,
yeah, I was definitely curious what was going to happen, because the movie starts off completely in Spanish, and then it just pivots at that song, and even Zoe Saldana doesn't sound great. They're all talking. One of the things I hate the most, which will resonate especially,
Manitas was the cartel leader's name.
It'll resonate with the whole movie, but I also hate that whisper talking, normal singing. That's not my type of musical. I know some musicals thrive on that and some people really like it. I don't. And I think this musical specifically didn't have enough music that really caught my attention. But you make the switch to English, and then you make this real grand stage about this gender affirming surgery, which I felt wasn't in very good taste. You have the conversation with several doctors that are, again, singing very badly. It's just not very good in English, right? If it's in Spanish, maybe it has some flair, but according to people who speak the language, you can't even make that out in this movie. So what the hell were we actually doing? And then, Phil, this movie, to kind of skip towards, I guess, the most of the plot that is occurring here, this movie takes a turn from, I want to live a different life, and I want my family to be taken care of, to, I want to ruin my fucking family's life. And I want to be selfish and egotistical. And there's a lot there that can make a complex character, but they don't do any of it, Phil. To me, they presented Emilia Pérez as a complete monster. A complete monster. And I think when your main character is a trans character, maybe, and again, I'm not the demographic to speak on this, but maybe you don't want your main character to be a monster, a literal scumbag. And that is what Emilia Pérez is. Selfishly brings her family back into the mix, causes all of the escalations, and is very aggressive. Very, very aggressive in everything that she wants. So I'm very curious, Phil, as we get towards the middle of the film. A lot of the manipulation that happens. What was your take on Emilia Pérez, the character, when everything was said and done?
Yeah, and this is, again, probably the main primary thing that a lot of people are upset with, because, like you said, she is the switch from Manitas to Emilia. It's presented in a way that it is essentially absolving Manitas of what has happened, which in no way is that the case. It's also presenting the fact that, like, it's reaffirming stereotypes, gender stereotypes, that it's the woman that is more nurturing and more loving, and that Emilia is also still partially Manitas in this story. And again, that's a huge issue. So yeah, I agree with you, because while we are using Emilia also as a vessel, I've also seen people describe her as just being like a thing to move this plot along. And you are also humanizing and kind of glorifying, oh, well, these cartel members wanted to help. Like, this is a huge problem in Mexico. A massive problem. The cartels and the Sicario are demolishing what's happening, like, in Mexico. And I've heard so many horror stories just because I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, and that's another thing. We haven't even gotten to the Spanish, like the Spanish speaking. There's so much, like, it's even all intertwined. Like you said, presenting Emilia in this way, and then also entrenching her with this Sicario reclamation project. It's gross. It's just gross.
Very much. I don't think that this was the right premise to make your main character feel like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like, such a absolutely tone deaf decision. And when it comes to everything about this movie, this is a French film, and there's nothing authentic or, like, just, again, real.
Didn't even film in Mexico. Didn't film
in Mexico. So
French crew.
It's just not authentic in any way, with a French cast and French crew, and not doing it in Mexico. Again, so many things that are just so problematic with this film. And at the end of the day, right, even if you took away your personal feelings about it, this movie just really isn't entertaining in any way. So it's not a good musical. And then when you break it down from a film perspective, there are some cinematic shots here that are very confusing. They do things like through the cell phone with Selena Gomez. That took me out of it. I hated
that scene so much. And she's going into the closet where there's a dance number for some reason.
To a song that is not very catchy.
I hated it.
It's not very good. Selena Gomez is given absolutely nothing to do here. Now, I'm not going to defend that she's a good actress, right? But none of these characters are really given much to do. There are just so many issues, Phil. So many issues. And these issues were all present when it got 13 nominations.
And when people watched it at Cannes.
Yes. This movie, just absolutely suffering. Now scores and all of that are starting to come into play. We'll talk about the drama that has ensued since the announcement. But yeah, Phil, what else do you want to talk about this movie? This is your chance to kind of let loose and rip it apart. I think for me, as much fun as it would be to destroy this movie, I just ultimately feel disgusted. And I, from a rating perspective, made sure to reflect that in my rating, which, if you know me and you listen to the podcast, I don't usually go to a certain territory when it comes to rating movies, but I'm there. I am there, man. So what else did you want to kind of rip into or give some thoughts on a little further?
Yeah, I think you could even make the argument, because obviously the scene that's going viral, men to a woman, like, that whole scene is terrible. The scene right after with the European doctor is, again, terrible singing, like you mentioned, is just as bad. It is so bad. And then the Selena Gomez scene, like you just talked about, with her on the phone and in the closet, also terrible. Listen, I've taken shit, and I've taken my my wounds as far as with Wicked. I'll watch Wicked every day before I even think about any song from this. And not to mention, like you said, none of them are good. No one's even really singing very well. That's the whole thing. And I remember when I didn't really know too much about Emilia Pérez, and I remember hearing about how Zoe Saldana had to learn how to rap. I was like, I beg your pardon. What do you mean? Like, what's that mean? The Jennifer Lawrence meme? Like,
What do you mean? What do you mean?
What do you mean you had to learn how to rap? So, yeah, there was one thing that I did laugh at in the movie, and it's when Emilia buys the boys the ski machine, the ski video game. I thought that was kind of cute, and then you see like the maids playing on it, like right after they go to school or something. I thought that was kind of funny. That was the only time I'm like, it's like, it wasn't even like it was like an exhale of the nose, you know, like exhaling air.
Except she's also probably using that to completely manipulate those children as
100%,
well.
100%.
So everything just like has a turn into something gross or just like not very effective character building.
The line of dialogue where Selena Gomez is like, my part is like still throbbing for you. I was like, where the fuck did this come from?
Yeah, there was like that whole angle.
Who wrote this shit? Was it also let me see. Who was credited? It was also
as the writer.
Jacques Fuckface. I'm not. I guarantee you when he wrote that he was like, oh, we.
That was. All right.
Jacques! Ocean! Wait. Oh, we really need Peter. Peter does that whole scene perfectly. I might need to bring Peter in to record that specific scene and just use it as a soundboard clip.
We've lost all sense of the plot, as did this movie. It's fitting that this movie pretty much ends in a blaze of glory. So I'd like to maybe skip ahead to the ending of this film. So we go through this entire journey of this character, and she just dies in a fiery car.
We even talk about like the love interest that just kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, and then there's like a shootout. There's like a cartel shootout or something going on there. And basically she's just lauded as this legend, as this like, oh, Emilia Pérez, let's all mourn her. She did so much. And again, when we look at this movie from start to finish, it's not just problematic. It's not just a bad movie, but it takes all of the themes that could be somewhat effective. Again, Phil, it's not the most absurd plot that could be done. I don't know if this movie would ever be more than a 3 out of 5, but there's a okay movie that could be made here, somewhat entertaining movie. And by the time you get to that ending, it's like, oh, so there really was no hope. There really was no shot at there being some type of redemption or payoff. And I said this in my review that I did after I watched the movie. This movie is both somehow too short. It doesn't give the characters enough room to breathe or to grow properly to where you can really resonate with them. But thank God this movie isn't any longer than it is already, because it's too damn long. So I don't know, again, when a movie starts to have that tough, too short, too long tag on it, it's not only a movie I never want to watch again, but it's a movie I would never recommend for someone to see other than to just completely shit on it, and because they like, hurting themselves, inflicting self-harm upon viewing.
Yeah, call the hotline for those people. Like, please check on your friend if they
if they just actively say,
and see,
I want to watch Emilia Pérez.
The Emilia Pérez poster on their wall. Please just call somebody. Yeah, because this is different than like when you look at the other films that are like at the bottom of our lists in 2024. 2024. Mine more specifically because I watched a lot of bad films. This is different from a Madam Web or a Borderlands. Like, you get it. You understand.
Even a Joker.
Even the Joker. You understand the end game there. Money. We want to use this giant property to print money. I don't know what is the goal here. again, because the director is talking about Spanish and Mexico in general as being, Spanish specifically being like a dirty language, like the language of the poor. And so, like, why did he choose a setting for something that he doesn't even have any respect or any type of admiration for? It just, I would really, I can't wait till years from now. We are going to get that, like, documentary, which will really be funny if it's on Netflix. Wouldn't that be wild?
It would be
because
poetic.
I'll tell you this, I watched this today, and it's not on. You can't find it, like, on the front page anymore. A couple weeks ago, it was there, and even when you search it, it does say Oscar nomination, but I had to, like, go into the search bar and
we're going to talk about that.
Emilia.
Oh, yeah, no, we're going to we're going to recap some of that for sure. So
Netflix
that,
is, like,
they're abandoning ship, yes.
The drawstring, yeah. So
they are abandoning ship.
We have, because of what's happened, and again, you talked about what's going to happen between now and Oscar season, or the Oscars. We don't know what's going to happen between now, date of recording, Friday night, February 7th, and Wednesday when the episode comes out. We're going to be like, well, shit, I wish we could have talked about that.
Yeah. No, it's going to be rough. And, Phil, if we can, let's go ahead and let's talk about the reception of this film, our scores, and then we could talk a little bit about some of the Oscar drama that has plagued this movie, to kind of wrap things up. But yeah, Rotten Tomatoes, Letterboxd averages, let's get into it because it is not good.
Yeah, Eric alluded to it earlier. 73% certified fresh score on the tomato meter, 17% popcorn meter score for users. Over on Letterboxd, it is currently at a 2.2 out of 5, with 20% of those reviews being a half star. Let's see what's highest next. Looks like 2-star reviews at a 13% is the next highest, tied with 1-star reviews, also at a 13%. So,
and those half-star ratings, that's over 73,000 people.
73,000. Yeah, it's got 401 fans, which is nuts. I would like to talk to the 401 of you that selected the like button on this movie. I'll tell you this quick story as well. There was a guy that I worked with at my previous job, and he was like a big film guy, but he's like one of those more like kind of really in-depth film watchers, and I was his friend on Letterboxd, and I saw his review and that he gave this a 3.5, and I unfollowed him. So we don't talk anyway. I don't give a shit. He's never going to listen to this. Even if he did, fuck yourself. What's wrong with you? So I don't care. We didn't really talk anyway. So I unfollowed him. I wish I still had the review up. I also want to bring up this before we talk about our scores. The funniest thing I saw on YouTube, I saw in one comment said something like, this movie is like saying bonjour to an Italian waiter at a Chinese restaurant in Scotland. And
that's, yeah. That is accurate.
You know how when like your older relative orders their margarita in Spanish? That's kind of what's happening. That's kind of what's happening here. Eric, I will go first. I gave this a 1. And even that feels like generous. I guess it's just out of respect for Zoe Saldana because, as you alluded to, she is trying. And I'm sure whoever was in her ear told her this could be something really special. And she probably is overdue for one of these recognized performances. Did she not win anything for Avatar? Or was that all like cinematography stuff?
Special effects, no, not for performance. Yeah. I don't believe.
Yeah, so I mean, we know how talented she is, and again, it's a bummer that this is going to be tied to her forever. She has also been very outspoken about some of the other things that have happened that we'll discuss here in a moment. But yeah, Eric, I gave this a 1. It would go back and forth in terms of just talking about 2024 films between this and Borderlands. They are gross for different reasons, obviously, but that's along the lines of the worst films that I saw in 2024, of course. So yeah, 1 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, so when I watched this movie, I did give it a 1.5 out of 5. It was my bottom film, tied with Joker at a 1.5 score, and I don't normally give films lower than a 2. I don't usually watch those type of films. So the fact that I had 2 of them from last year alone was pretty alarming.
Both musicals.
I'm going to be honest, Phil, I dropped it down to a 1 just now, just because, like, just talking about it, I don't really have anything positive to say other than there are pieces of this film. It's also not the worst shot film in the world. There are very weird cinematic choices that have been made from an editing standpoint and direction standpoint, but again, Zoe Saldana, there's somewhat of, like, I could kind of understand what they were maybe trying to go for at certain points, but they completely lose sense of any reality, their own plot, and any type of humanism that I think for a story like this you have to have. So I have dropped it down to a 1, and to no one's surprise, for all of the international films, we've seen at least 28 international films in our series. It is last, and it is last on both of our lists. I believe it's the only one we've given.
Congratulations, Boy and the Heron.
It's the only movie we've given less than a 2 to, and it's it's not great. Not great. So yeah, that is my score. I don't love telling people to watch this to just shit on it. I'd rather you just skip it completely, but if you are going to watch it to join the conversation, just know it's a movie you're never going to forget, but not for any of the good reasons you normally have that feeling for.
It's going to sit with you for, unfortunately. So, but, you know, I do anticipate that score getting lower. I don't know what it was when you saw it, Eric. You did mention it's gone down since you saw it. So, it, like we said, it's at a 2.2 now. So
it was, I believe, like a 2.4, maybe close to a 2.5. And then the Rotten Tomatoes, the audience score was just under 30%.
Okay.
So it has gone down drastically. Drastically, yeah. And I think people wanted to see what the fuss was about.
And this is the type of movie, because obviously the comparison is Crash, which is easily the worst film that has ever won Best Picture. And what happens is someone makes a movie that they think is inclusive and they think is going to let's address all the issues going on right now, right? Let's address sexism, let's address trans rights, let's address racism, and we're going to put it in this movie and everybody is going to love it. And unfortunately, when you talk about Oscar bait, that's what this is addressing. And that's exactly what happened with Crash. So some of you may be too young, which is crazy to say. Crash came out in 2004. It is a race bait movie. It is incredibly offensive. It's a white savior film. It is terrible. And I remember Eric, a close friend of ours, was like, this is one of the greatest movies, former close friend, this is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. And I remember watching it and being like, this was racist as shit. What is wrong with you? And we don't really talk to that person. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean,
if someone tells you they love Emilia Pérez, you probably shouldn't talk to that person anymore.
No, you shouldn't. At least Crash had like an all-star cast. Like, the casting here is also not very strong across the board. I do not think that, you know, the lead actress for this film, I understand momentum-wise, like for the moment, what that does to get the nomination. I understand that is important. But other than that, from just a performance standpoint, I don't think she should have gotten the nomination for best performance by an actress. You can get away with Zoe Saldana. I think there is maybe one or two more people that would have been more appropriate, but if you wanted to give it to her, I guess I understand. I don't think her performance was extraordinary. I think she was the star of a sinking ship. So that's really all that I have to say on that part. But talking about the Oscars, obviously a lot of stuff has happened since the film's release, and specifically, a lot has happened since it got the almost record-breaking 13 nominations for the Oscars. So, let's go down the line and just kind of quickly discuss this. There were already a lot of discussions, apologies, stuff like that, comments that were made, but everything really got turned on its head by the director of the film, which, Phil, I think you mentioned this, made many stupid comments, cherried on top with the Mexican Spanish language is for poor people, is the summary statement. Then you also had Carla Sofia Gascon, again, the first openly transgender woman to be nominated for an Oscar, is one of the most vile human beings that you can find on Twitter. And that included tweets that she got backlash for from things like comments on Muslims, George Floyd, and diversity at the Oscars. Then on top of everything, Phil, and this is where I really want us to talk about the fallout from all of this, everyone is distancing themselves from their lead actress here. The director has, Zoe Saldana has, and Netflix has. Netflix is not going to push for the nomination any further, and they're not financially supporting her to even go to the Oscars, based off of some recent reports I've read. So, Phil, all that to say, this may have been a surprise to many people for the amount of nominations it's got, but there's a real possibility this movie walks away in a blaze of glory, like the end of its own actual film, with 0 actual wins at the Oscars. So how do you feel about that? And any kind of thoughts about how this movie has, again, set itself ablaze?
Yeah, and once again, I think when people probably started, when people started hearing about this movie, there's a trans woman in a trans role that's they're hearing is a complex character, right? Like, that is, surface level, a step in the right direction. And then, we are where we are now. So when this thing won Best Picture at the Golden Globes, I mean, and I hadn't seen it yet. I don't think you saw it until after it won, correct? So, I mean, well, let's just talk about, I've seen all these movies at this point, except for one, and you have seen it. So, it's not better than A Real Pain. It is certainly not better than Anora. We enjoy Challengers. I know people love Challengers. It's not as good as Challengers. I assume it's not better than The Substance, and it's definitely not better than Wicked. And thank goodness, and I don't think we've seen any of these other films that were nominated for non-English language films, so we probably need to go watch some of those, because they're probably pretty upset. And yeah, I'm sure the Golden Globes is very happy that Gascon did not walk away with an individual award over, I believe, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Demi Moore. So, the fact that all of this has happened is, and it might walk away with nothing, that's fantastic, but like, it shouldn't be here anyway. So regardless of what happens, 13 nominations, that doesn't go anywhere. It's nominated for as many Oscars as Oppenheimer, you guys. That's the example that I use because it's the most recent thing that I can point to. Oppenheimer. Guys.
Are you guys listening? Are you guys listening? Yeah. It's again just it's really oh my God, it's just really rough. I was just kind of looking through just some of the things that maybe we didn't touch on. We didn't even talk about the Papa song, which you smell like my dad.
Was like, yeah, and that's also something that would not happen if a trans woman is taking certain substances. She is not going to smell like that kid's father.
And like, I understand the intention is that, like, there's a familiarity there,
right?
Because obviously this fucking psychopath has brought her kids back into her life and is literally lying to their fucking faces like they're stupid. So yeah, no, like, I get it. It's just execution. It's distasteful. It's very distasteful. And we are not the type of people to beat the drum and like, oh my God, we didn't get this representation, or oh my God, they should have done this casting like this. We're pretty open. If it works, it works. This movie in no way, shape, or form works. And again, it's just not surprising to see the blowout of this film and the self-implosion that has happened from its highly controversial lead actress.
Yeah, and that's the other issue too, is that they believe people that create movies like this or nominate them, they think, well, you should just be happy with representation in general. we're past that, man. That's not the case anymore. So, yeah, as far as everybody else that is nominated for actress in a leading role, Cynthia Erivo, Mikey Madison, Demi Moore, Fernanda Torres, and then Gascon. So,
yeah,
one of those. I think Demi Moore would probably be the favorite, and I'd probably put Erivo right behind her. So,
I would also do Erivo, although I would love to see Mikey Madison win it.
Yeah. And Honora is, again, we talked about this in Pretty Woman, another movie that people have had discussions about, and Mikey, I would love to see her because Honora got nothing at the Golden Globes, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I don't think she'll get it. I think the reason I wouldn't give it to Demi Moore because again I wasn't the biggest fan of The Substance.
Yeah.
I can acknowledge her performance was good. I am just a big Wicked supporter, and I to kind of tie it together out of my bias. This is probably a shoo-in for Ariana Grande to win Best Supporting Actress, and I would love to see them both win an Oscar. Because I love both of their performances quite a lot from Wicked.
Monica Barbaro, Felicity Jones,
yeah,
Isabella Rossellini. Oh, man.
I know.
Yeah, I didn't see The Brutalist, but obviously we love Conclave.
Yep.
That was the other thing that guy mentioned that was in that I used to work with. He also mentioned that if you don't think that this deserves some sort of like recognition or awards, but you think that Conclave was really good, then
that's insane.
I was like, nope, I'm out.
That's absolutely insane.
I wish I had screenshot the review, but it was absurd.
And I've openly talked about Conclave. For those of you that have not heard my thoughts about it, to tie it in here, I thought it was very tastefully done. The ending of Conclave.
Yeah.
If you have not watched Conclave, I won't spoil it, but there's a reason I'm bringing it up on this particular episode with the themes we're talking about. Another movie, unlike Conclave, which I really loved, and that wasn't a central point. It was more of a major development that happens, not a central plot point. I saw The TV Glow. Has a ton of underlying representation that while it wasn't a movie targeted for me, nor did I really enjoy it as a film. I didn't really think it was for me at all. I could understand that this movie probably meant a lot to other people. Where Emilia Pérez, this movie's not for anybody.
Who?
Not for nobody.
Who is this for? Yeah, to just really touch on Conclave really quick, because I texted you about the ending, and then your answer was we don't really know. It was the one you're not the audio only audience, but like the GIF where the guy is like he like leans back, and I was like, whoa, like the ramifications and of the ending of Conclave. I was just like, man, that's crazy. But to kind of wrap this up, Best Picture nominees: Honora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown. Want to see those as well. Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Pérez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. So, as far as Best Picture, I don't know. I would love to see Dune or Conclave take it. Maybe you do. Maybe because of everything that's happened, you just kind of like get an easy win in there and give it to Wicked. But I don't know, man. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah. But at this point, it does look like they are going to probably be shut out. That includes Zoe Saldana. I think she still has a shot, but I don't think they're going to give that Oscar. I don't think they're going to give any Oscar to Emilia Pérez. And that's the decision. It shouldn't have been nominated, as we discussed.
Camino was nominated for original song. Which song even is that?
There's two songs.
My God, I didn't even notice that.
They had two songs nominated.
Which one's El Mal? Oh, that's the one where she's in. El Mal is the one where they're like at the gala, the fundraiser. And then what is this other one? Mi Camino.
Is that the first one?
That's Car. Camino's. So which song is that? Oh my God, really? Oh my! It's the one where fucking Selena Gomez is singing karaoke with her boyfriend.
Oh, which again, that was another example of like the cinematic shots, dude. Yeah, they're bad.
So.
Yeah, so I think we've gotten a lot off of our chest. Again, there is so much about this film that people that come from the demographic that this movie pretends it's for can really maybe express more detailed information about what makes it so honestly just disgusting to watch. But again, from a two straight guys on a podcast that just are nerds, yeah, those were our thoughts, I guess. So take them with a grain of salt. Maybe form your own opinion, but I genuinely don't think that anyone could like this movie. Like, genuinely, and I'm talking about if I gave it a 1, I'd even stretch to like a 2.5. Like, anything above a 2.5 out of 5, like Phil did, we're going to probably cut you off completely. So just be prepared for that.
Yeah, do not...
Objectively. Respectfully.
Respectfully. Sometimes Eric and I say a lot, which is fine. There is no which is fine. That's not happening here. So, this movie is about as poorly run as the Dallas Mavericks with Nico Harrison, Eric. So, it's just bad all around.
Honestly, I didn't know I'd be seeing this many car crashes so close to each other.
Oh, boy. Well, folks, that is Emilia Pérez, and we hope that next month we get back on track with international features, because, again, we were talking about it in January. Hey, great start. This is going to be great. But then, we just had to talk about this, given everything that is going on, and do you guys a favor, if you're not going to watch it, to just warn you. We owe that to you as far as our audience goes. But if you want to find some of the films and TV shows, video games, and also the wonderful content creators that we speak to, you can find everything you need in the Linktree link in the show notes of this and every single episode. You can also follow us on social media, the most important ones being Instagram, TikTok, our growing and flourishing, might I add, Eric, Discord community. It's been a whole lot of fun in there. So if you want to roast me about how much I love Spy Family, apparently, come on in. It's a great time. Make sure you join the Discord channel. We also stream every other week over on Twitch, and we're on YouTube. So if you want to support the show, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, leave us 5-star reviews, like, share, subscribe on YouTube. You know the drill. We appreciate all of that. But if you find yourself wanting more from the podcast and some behind-the-scenes stuff and getting to interact with another exclusive community here in the podcast, Eric will tell you a little bit about that. And let's get out of here. I don't want to ever think about this movie again.
Yeah, so usually we do try to give benefits to our Patreon members, which you could be, but that would also require you to get episodes like this early, and unfortunately we have to deliver this content to our patron family. We apologize, but normally the content is great. We're very happy about the movies we watch, and we'd like to thank those people right now: Briar, Stefan, T3 Cato, Corey from The World Is My Burrito, and Vintage and Bridget from Retro AV Rewind. Thank you so much for your monthly support, and if you'd like to join them, again, early access, behind-the-scenes looks, and much, much more for episodes like this one. Plus, we have Patreon month coming, where they are recommending television shows, movies, and or games for us to watch and play. So come join the community, or any of the free options and other communities that we have ongoing. All of that support is very much appreciated. My name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino. And please don't forget, we release new episodes every Wednesday for the podcast with bonus content on platforms like Twitch and TikTok. And all you got to do is wait for it.
This is the Wait For It podcast.